We're joined now by the Conservative MP for Rutland and Melton, Alicia Kearns. Thank you so much for being with us. We were just talking to Grant Shapps there about refugees. He's hoping to get a Ukrainian family into his home. And I know that you've been involved in pairing Ukrainian families to people in your constituency and also fellow MPs. How have you found the system to navigate?
So, the frustration is you have to know Ukrainians to be able to match with them. The good news is because I have the privilege of working with the most amazing group of Ukrainian MPs, they've matched me with, I think so far I've matched 26 Ukrainian families to, I think, 20 homes in my constituency, and then another 5 or 6 families to British MPs who are willing to take people into their homes. And it has been a mixed picture. I have one visa that was applied for on the Monday and came through by the Tuesday afternoon. I've got another visa that has been in the system now for 10 days. The frustration is obviously we still need to go faster and further in terms of making sure people can apply in their own language and that we get these things done quickly. But when I speak to Ukrainian MPs, actually they're saying we want you to do security checks because we want this to work. And there is a difference to other schemes in that we are inviting people into British people's homes. So there is a duty of care there to make sure this is going to work. But so far, we've got a number of people arriving tomorrow. And I think we're all very much looking forward to welcoming them into our homes.
I do totally recognise the duty of care when people are coming into individuals' homes from both sides, from the UK side, but also from the Ukrainian family side as well. But should the visa process be at least changed in some way to allow people to get out of Ukraine as quickly as they can, and then some of the bureaucracy can be done when they're here in the United Kingdom?
We all want this to move as quickly as possible, and I think the scenes we're seeing from Bucha and from Mariupol make clear that there are war crimes taking place and we want people out as soon as possible. The vast majority of Ukrainians that I've been matching with my constituents are actually already out of Ukraine. So they are applying from Hungary or from Germany or from Poland and places like that. So we do know that Ukrainians are getting out safely, and now we just need to get them to the UK.
OK. A couple of issues with the signal there, but I think it should be OK now, so we're going to keep going. We were talking about the energy strategy as well, and this, of course, links into the cost of living crisis. There's been stories in the newspapers today about up to 7 new nuclear stations. It was interesting listening to Grant Shapps, though, who was pretty firm on the idea of onshore wind, saying it was an eyesore, that it's not something that he could support. Do you think that the government is right to be moving away from onshore wind?
So I think that offshore wind is the greatest opportunity that we have in terms of energy. And I know that the Prime Minister has spoken before about being the Saudi Arabia of wind. We have the Celtic Sea. I think that's where we should be investing the majority of our wind focus. In terms of onshore wind, I'm probably one of the only people in the country that thinks that onshore wind is actually quite beautiful in its own way. But I recognise that I don't probably represent the majority there. So I think offshore wind should absolutely be our priority. And that also allows us to move away from our reliance on these dangerous solar farm supply chains where too many of the companies are bound up in the genocide we're seeing of the Uyghur.
At the same time, though, it's probably right to declare your own interest. I mean, you've campaigned to stop a solar farm in your constituency. Is this not part of the issue, though, that, if we are going to get energy security and an energy supply that is going to heat people's homes securely, someone's going to have to live near solar farms, onshore wind farms, nuclear power stations as well? I mean, how are you going to square that?
We already have solar plants in Rutland and Melton, and we will have more solar plants in Rutland and Melton in the future. But what I won't accept is having a company such as Canadian Solar they've had some of their suppliers sanctioned by the US government. They've had 4 shipments of their solar plants to the US taken off them because they have been proven now, including by a report by the University of Sheffield, to be complicit in the genocide of the Uyghur people. I will not have bloodstained solar panels essentially pollute our environment. There are alternatives to polysilicon that can go into solar panels. There's a great piece of work going on at Loughborough University. There are companies that are producing these solar panels now without polysilicon. So we can clean up our supply chains. We can stop using the cheap Uyghur slave labour that is making the vast majority of solar panels around the country in the world at the moment. But that's a choice and a decision we have to make. So I'm not saying no to solar, quite the opposite. I'm saying we want cleaner solar and solar that isn't cheap for us because it's built on the blood and slave labour of others.
Now, I want to talk to you a bit about maternity care in the United Kingdom. And just sort of speaking frankly for a minute, on a Sunday show, you're often looking to throw forward to stories that are happening next week, like the energy security strategy. But I actually want to just take a moment and speak about a story that I found extremely personally affecting this week. And it is this story that 201 babies and 9 mothers died as a result of failings at the Shrewsbury and Telford NHS Trust. I mean, we're talking here about the deaths of more than 200 babies. And I know that you're someone who's spoken out about maternity care before. Can we really say the UK is a safe place for women to give birth in?
I think that report, the anger and the heartbreak that I have felt, and clearly you have felt, and so many of us have felt, I have to say that as an MP over the last 2.5 years, I have sadly had to conclude that NHS bureaucracies are inherently and systematically sexist. There is a constant expectation that women's services and care can be done on the cheap, or that because women have given birth for generations and generations, they don't deserve the support they need. My mother saw me speak out in Parliament, and actually she said to me that she remembered when she was giving birth to my brother and she asked for a C-section. No, I lied, she asked for an epidural because she'd been in labour for so many days and so much pain. And she remembers being screamed at by the consultant and told, "You think you're special? You're not special. Women do this every day." Again, I shared my own experience of having a C-section. I ended up being taken to the operating theatre twice because they weren't willing to give me the C-section that I needed when I'd been in labour for 36 hours and my son had already almost died once, because of this obsession with stats and low C-section rates, and also this idea that there is a normal birth. There is no such thing as the births that we see in movies. Some women have amazing birth stories, but these should not be expected of all women. And I do worry that we have seen it be very unsafe over the last 2 years, as we saw with the campaign that you and I spoke about a lot, about partners being locked out of the room. That made women less safe. So I think we have a way to go, but I think anyone who's watching this is about to go into labour, know that our hospitals are safe, but you need to know that you have every right to challenge the system and to say at any point, wait, no, why, what are the alternatives and why are you doing this? It is your body and you have a right to challenge and demand better and demand what you need to keep you safe.
I think this is exactly it, isn't it? It's this feeling that what happened at Shrewsbury and Telford is the worst example of when the system goes wrong. But every woman, and many women listening to this programme, or their mothers or their sisters or their friends, will have their own stories of birth not going in the way that they wanted, of losing control of the birth and of not feeling safe or supported. And I think it, as you say, it goes back to that thing about women being listened to. What needs to change going forward, and what can the government do to try and make the situation better or less sexist, as you say?
Well, I think Sajid is exactly the man to deal with this. He cares deeply about fighting for women's rights. He cares deeply about families and supporting them. And I know that he has been personally found it very hard seeing the conclusions of this report and how much women and families, lives were lost, and that heartache and pain that people went through is something that they will still be living with today. So I have absolute confidence that Sajid is going to make sure the maternity system gets what it needs. He's given it the biggest investment of funds that I think it's ever seen. And I believe truly that if there is a health secretary that will fight for it, it is Sajid, and he will make sure that women's voices are listened to. And he has committed to looking around the country to make sure that we don't see something like this again.
OK, thank you for talking so openly about what happened and your own experiences as well. Just finally, you've been on the gay conversion therapy ban. I was just keen to try and unpick what exactly happened this week. First, the Prime Minister said it was going to be banned. Then he backtracked. Then he was contacted by 60 MPs, I believe, including yourself. And then he said it would be banned. Can you just unpick what exactly went on? Because it looks pretty shambolic from someone on the outside.
Look, obviously, I don't work in Number 10. I don't know exactly what happened. But I do know that when I got elected, I went to the Prime Minister and said, we need to ban conversion therapy. It is wrong. It tells every gay and trans person in this country that they don't deserve to be loved, that they have some sort of pathology that can be cured. And that is wrong. And he was really surprised that it was still legal, because when he was Mayor of London, he banned the advertising of conversion therapy on the tube because he recognised how wrong and dangerous it was. So in all my conversations with him, he has backed this ban entirely. It was in the last Queen's speech. And then, yes, on Friday, we saw this leaked document that suggests the government was going to drop the ban. And I think colleagues very rightfully made clear to the Prime Minister and to everyone else within the system how strongly they felt that this cannot continue within our country. We will not allow gay and trans people to feel attacked, threatened and unsafe in our country by allowing this legislation to, well, essentially this appalling quackery and fraudulent activity to continue in our country. And the good thing now is that the Prime Minister has been clear the ban will go forward. But for me now, it's about making sure it is the right ban, and that crucially, we don't say that trans people will be excluded from this ban because they are vulnerable. And when people want to criticise this bill, I would say very clearly, if you are arguing that there's not enough critical conversations taking with young people who are questioning their gender identity, then you should back this bill. Because this bill says that if you are questioning your sexuality or your gender identity, then when you want to have these challenging, critical and safe conversations, they should take place with a regulated and accredited individual, not a quack, not a woke hippie around the corner, someone who will genuinely work with you and support you through this process. That should be what we want for all of our children. And we should want to send a very clear message that everyone in this country deserves to be loved and that being who you are is never a pathology.
OK, thank you for being on the programme today. We are out of time. Thank you.